Hey, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Scott Luton and Kevin L. Jackson here with you on Supply Chain Now. Welcome to today's live stream. Kevin, how you doing?
Yeah. Good morning. Last night I drove up to Baltimore, and then I was driving home,
Yeah,
and I had to turn my heater on. It got cold. What's happening? What's
man,
happening?
that is welcome news. That is a welcome development, Kevin.
I don't know. I don't like cold weather.
No? Well,
No.
hey, whenever you're ready, you
Yeah,
can
they
make
they got this thing. They got this stuff called snow. I know y'all never hear that down there.
we can't handle any precipitation too well down here in the South, Kevin. But anytime you're ready to come on down and have a milder winter, you have an open invitation to join us in Metro
Thank
Atlanta.
you,
So,
thank you. I will take you up on that deal.
well, but all of that aside, today, folks, is the Supply Chain Buzz, where we share some of the leading stories from across global business. It's the Digital Transformers edition of the Buzz today. We're going to be talking about a variety of topics, and folks, get ready because we want to hear from you as well. So, let us know your take on some of these stories that we're going to be working through. And Kevin, we've got no
Yeah.
shortage of things to talk about today, right?
You know what? I'm going to declare this month Digital Transformers Month
Okay.
because we have this show. I'm going to be on the 17th. We have our regular show after that, and the next Digital Transformers will drop.
Man, it is going to be a busy month. You got some clones working this month, Kevin?
Hey, we try.
True digital transformation. Okay. Well, folks, what we want to do, we're going to say hello to a few folks in just a minute. I see Jonathan and T Squared already in here with us.
Oh,
Big
the
thanks to,
crowd.
we do. Big thanks to the production team, of course, helping make things happen. Chantel, Catherine, and Amanda. But let's share a few events to get going here today, Kevin. We want to invite folks, Kevin, to join us at our next webinar. Tomorrow, October 11th. It's hard to believe it's already the 11th of October, 2 p.m. Eastern Time, special time. We're going to be talking about why a probabilistic approach is better to manage uncertainty when it comes to forecasting. Kevin, have you ever heard of a probabilistic forecasting?
Probable. Yeah, that's right there next to Monte Carlo simulations.
Hey, we're going to find out tomorrow. For me, it's tough enough to say probabilistic. We
I'm
got to
not going to even
practice.
try.
Well, folks, join us tomorrow, special time, 2 p.m. Eastern Time, as we invite our friends from North Fine Management and Tools Group for that webinar. Then coming up Thursday, also a special time, 11:30 a.m. Eastern Time. We're going to be talking about how finance and commercial teams are collaborating to improve global supply chains. So join us there as we bring in folks from Electric Case and our friends at Enable. Kevin,
Hey,
collaboration is not a nice to have; it's table stakes these days amongst these functional areas of an organization, right?
well, it's minimal. I really like the term co-creation, right? When you're working together, I think it's much better than collaborate.
Okay, co-creation. I like it. I'm gonna steal that from you. Hope I don't owe you any commissions there, licenses or what have you. But hey, kidding aside, folks, on October 18th, so that's a week from tomorrow, right? Tuesday, October 18th at 11 a.m. Eastern Time. It's our next planning session for our ongoing Leveraging Logistics for Ukraine initiative. Now, Kevin, we got updated numbers as of a couple of days ago,
Oh,
and
okay.
there have been over 500,000 pounds of vetted humanitarian aid make its way to Ukraine, Poland, and the region for folks in need. How about that?
Wow, wow. It's really making a difference. That leveraging logistics is making a difference.
Yeah, agreed. And we couldn't do it, of course. Our fearless leaders there, Vector Global Logistics, Enrique, Christy, Maureen, that whole team. But they've really built a global community that's all helping out. Some folks are bringing information. Other folks are bringing supplies. Other folks are bringing, logistics and what have you. But hey, show up on the 18th at 11 a.m. just to kind of piece it all together. So whether you come to network or you come to learn or you come to even give, you name it, no matter. Just come and join us on the 18th at 11 a.m. Eastern Time.
Hey, sorry to interrupt you there, but do you know what today is?
Beyond October 10th, I do not.
It is Indigenous Peoples Day. Did you know that?
I didn't. Hey, I learned something new every hour I spend with you, Kevin. So
So it's also known as Columbus Day. It's supposed to be a federal holiday. I don't know why I'm working, but today is Indigenous Peoples Day. And this is when we honor the sovereignty, resilience, and immense contributions that Native Americans have made to the world. And we recommit as individuals and as a nation to upholding our solemn trust and treaty responsibilities to tribal nations that strengthen our nation to nation ties. I mean, there are multiple tribal nations that exist, and it's really important to recognize this day and the culture of Indigenous people.
yeah, completely agree. Completely agree. Helena says she did know that, Kevin.
See?
Indigenous Peoples Day. So, but I'm so glad you mentioned that because we should absolutely honor and lift up their contributions. We wouldn't be here in so many different ways
Mm-hmm.
without having working together. So I really appreciate you mentioning that on the front end, and we'll look for some practical ways of celebrating this special day.
Great.
All right. So before we get into the news, some of the news of the day, I'm just going to say hello to a few folks. Jonathan is back with us from Louisiana. Good morning to you. Hope you had a great weekend, Jonathan, and look forward to your perspective here today. T Squared is going back and talking weather, Kevin. He says it's
Oh.
called the fall slap, Kevin.
When you're driving, you sort of get,
smacked in the face.
Slap, the smack in the face.
And he also says Baltimore has trick weather all the time. Love that. Thank you for holding down the fort for us over at YouTube T Squared. Catherine, happy Buzz Day. It's also Buzz Day here today. So great to have you, Catherine. Appreciate what you and Chantel and Amanda do back behind the scenes. Hey, Jason Hopkins is back with us. So Kevin, last week we found out from Jason that he moved back to Alabama from DC. He's a big Tide fan, which we already knew, the Alabama Crimson Tide. But Kevin, he brought in a new addition to the family.
Oh, wow. Congratulations.
And Jason, I cannot remember your newborn's name, so refresh our memory there. Joey, hey, good morning to you. Joey hails from Minnesota, I believe, Kevin. Speaking of, yeah, I was about to say, our heads and minds go to the same spot. I bet it is cold up in Minnesota, Joey, but great to have you here today. And then finally, before we dive into the news today, hey, Jenny Potzloff is here with us today. Good morning from Madison, she says. Finally able to join live since my standing meeting moved today. That's good. And my Badgers won this weekend. So she's a big, of course, Wisconsin fan, Kevin.
Well, it gets cold in Wisconsin too. But what's more important is that the buzz has higher priority than that standing meeting. I like that.
So that's a great point, Kevin. And Jenny, great to have you. I look forward to another big week and appreciate all the work you do for industry and beyond. And then finally, Naveed. Hey, good evening to you. Naveed hails from Pakistan. He's tuned in with us via LinkedIn. Great to have you, Naveed. Okay, folks, keep the comments coming. We want to hear from you as we work our way through 4 news stories we're going to be working our way through on the buzz here today. And Kevin, are you ready to dive in? I want to start here with this story here.
Slash.
That's right. A supply chain slap, maybe, or a digital transformation slap. I don't know. But I want to start with, digital transformation, of course, is nothing new. It's been going on. Organizations have been transforming in a number of different ways, but it's created some vulnerabilities across global organizations. So, Kevin, tell us more.
Yeah, absolutely. So a digital supply chain really is designed to provide visibility into the workings of the chain. But the supply and demand issues that we faced during the pandemic really revealed how fragile supply chains can be, especially with the increased threat of cyber attacks. Because everybody's working from home, no longer work in that office. And organizations had really a challenge transitioning. And within supply chain, technologies like embedded sensors and GPS and RFID really helped companies to transform and to flex from the traditional supply chain structures into more agile, flexible, open, and collaborative digital models. But the connectivity itself has dramatically increased the vulnerabilities. It leaves the chain and the factories exposed to cybersecurity threats. A recent survey by Deloitte and the Manufacturers Alliance of Productivity and Innovation showed that 48% of the respondents identified operational risks like cybersecurity as the greatest danger to smart factory initiatives. And SCADA, supervisory control and data acquisition systems on all these machines, they are just overexposed to the internet by all these remote desktop applications. And the FBI said that larger businesses are being targeted based upon their ability to pay higher ransom demands, and smaller entities are soft targets. So, I mean, we really need to look at your cybersecurity when you're digitizing your processes.
Yep, agreed. And that FBI. So we're talking about this article from our friends at Supply and Demand Chain Executive. And Kevin, one of your final notes there was exactly where my eyes went. I mean, with the FBI warning, whether you're large or small, no matter, everyone's going to get hit. It's just a matter of how you can mitigate the risk. Because to your point, the smaller businesses, they're seen as softer and easier targets. It may have less resources, but it could be easier to get something out of these smaller organizations. So Kevin, it's a scary time for global supply chains in some ways.
The other thing they were talking about ransomware, the new wave now is ransomware as a service, where you don't even have to be technically adept to attack someone. You just hire somebody to execute a ransomware attack for you.
So if you haven't already, and hopefully your organizations, any of our listeners are already proactively assembling teams and resources to mitigate the risk. But boy, if you haven't, get to work right away. So thank you for sharing, Kevin, on the first story here on The Buzz. Really quick, before I move to our next story. So Jason's newborn daughter, her name is Lyric. That's right. I forgot.
Lyric.
I love that name. So Jason, congrats again. And can't wait to see how what else she introduces as a parent to all your responsibilities as the father of 3 and 2 daughters. It's one of life's best pleasures for sure. Sandmith is tuned in via LinkedIn from, is it Bari? Perhaps Kevin? Bari? So, well, regardless. Sam, great to have you here. Looking forward to your perspective as we work our way through the supply chain buzz. And by the way, folks, so that it's right at your fingertips, our team has dropped that first article, and we'll drop each of these articles right there in the chat so y'all can check it out for yourself. Okay, Kevin, are you ready to move to story number 2?
Yes, sir.
We move fast around here, I tell you. Well, this next story, Walmart continues to make big moves in its attempt at keeping up with what I'm calling the e-commerce Joneses.
The Joneses?
The e-commerce Joneses. Walmart, of course, it's a big player, but we know the big time e-commerce player that starts with an A that they've been trying to better compete against, right? So according to our friends over at Supply Chain Dive, last week, Kevin, Walmart announced that it had acquired Alert Innovation. Now, that's an eGrocery automation firm that makes customized inventory handling technology. So in a nutshell, they focus on building systems to store, retrieve, and dispense orders, really using all the latest technologies. And one of the core components in their platform is the use of robots that move, get this, omnidirectionally on their own. So as I understand it, there's no there's no pulleys, there's no conveyors.
Yeah.
They're really self-contained robots. They can move a wide variety of directions. It really cuts down on the space needed in a fulfillment center while speeding up order processing for customers. Now, that sounds like a great move,
Yeah.
especially, Kevin, in urban fulfillment centers where space is usually expensive and limited. And on a side note here, we've got a great interview coming out on Wednesday, 2 days from now, with Mike Prince, a very innovative and senior executive of Walmart. And on that episode, Kevin, Tony Sciarrotta with RLA and I, we dive into a variety of topics, including some of the really cool omni-channel things like this that Walmart is doing to better compete, to also drive customer experience, because that's one of the names of the game.
Yes,
So,
yes. When I looked at that article, the thing that jumped out at me was the automated micro fulfillment centers that they're going to put in all these stores. And it kind of reminded me of cloud computing. When cloud computing started, it was all about huge centralized data centers across, square miles of land and these big buildings with, here where I live in Manassas, all these buildings with no windows, not owned by the government, started popping up, and they were all data centers. And then as people started, the internet became more and more a part of our lives, they started transitioning from these big centralized data centers to more regional data centers. So they got smaller, but spread out across larger parts of the country. And I think the same thing is happening with this fulfillment. They're going away from these huge centralized distribution centers to smaller distribution centers, to the little lockers that are now popping up in 7-Elevens.
Yep, agreed. Certainly a lot more nimbleness. But what's powering that, enabling that, as you know, is better analytics, right? Better forecasting of what folks are going to be purchasing, right, based on the area that these micro fulfillment centers serve. So, fascinating time for sure.
Visibility, I think, is really important.
Agreed. All right. So, and y'all stay tuned for that episode. Again, we're releasing that on Wednesday, and I really enjoyed Mike Prince's perspective, all the cool things he's been up to over at Walmart. Dr. Rhonda, good morning to you. Great to see you here via LinkedIn. She's out in Arizona. Kevin, I bet it's a lot warmer where Dr. Rhonda is. Kevin, what you think?
I think I'm going to go to Arizona instead of Atlanta.
Well, that is where we first met.
Yeah, it was.
Scottsdale, I believe. You and I sat down.
Yes.
Met you and your wife, and of course our friend David and his
First
organization.
time you put me on camera.
That's
that
right.
was a risk.
Oh, you successfully mitigated that risk, Kevin. But Dr. Rhonda, kidding aside, great to have you here. Brian Shepard is tuned in from Cape Town. Hey, hope this finds you well, Brian. Great to have you here via LinkedIn. And finally, going back to the father thing, Jason says he's fortunate just to have one child just yet. First-time father, but it's rewarding and a lot of logistics, he says. Plenty.
Getting that supply chain knowledge in place.
That's right. That is right. Okay. So we were just talking about Walmart's recent acquisition. And again, we dropped that link in the chat there. Y'all can check that out and let us know what your take is on that story. Let's move over to talk manufacturing, Kevin. One of my favorite things to talk about. I love the manufacturing industry.
A lot of change there. A lot of change.
You're absolutely right. And in fact, this is going to be kind of a tale of two cities here in this report from the Wall Street Journal, where they say the current environment is getting more challenging for many manufacturers here in the States. So the Institute of Supply Management, ISM, they put out a monthly report that really measures a variety of things, but especially focuses on manufacturing activity and whether it's expanding or contracting. Well, the September numbers came out last week, and it's still, the manufacturing industry here in the States is still growing and expanding, but at a smaller or at a slower pace than it has been. So there's a few factors at play. We'll hit a couple here. Interest rates, of course, have jumped up, which will decrease demand in the housing markets, and that's going to push a lot of new factory orders down, right? The housing industry drives a lot of manufacturing activity. And the export market is looking less than rosy given the strong U.S. dollar, which might seem kind of counterintuitive, but the strong U.S. dollar and overseas economic challenges. So that's not helping our orders. But on the flip side, the mighty automotive sector, which is paramount to manufacturing activity. Kevin, there's some good news here. So demand has been strong. Heck, because folks can't get their hands on new cars, the used car market has really blown up in the last couple of years, right?
Right.
So demand's been strong. Chip supplies are finally catching up. That should lead to more sales and a lot less frozen fleets of new cars waiting for just that one final part before they're sold. Like many other
aspects. Probably a chip, a computer
right.
chip.
That's right. But like many other aspects of global business right now, we've talked a lot about patio furniture. There's been a lot. Nike's been in the news for a ton of inventory here lately. I mean, so many businesses, just like the automotive industry, it's going to be working through plenty of inventory in the months to come. So, Kevin, your thoughts here about some of this manufacturing news?
Well, one of the biggest transitions, and we talked about this before on the Buzz, is transition from fossil fuels to electric vehicles. So will all these cars that are waiting for parts, will they now not be able to be sold because like states like California are now mandating the transition to electric vehicles. So maybe these fossil fuel vehicles they'll be used cars before they even get on the lot as new. So maybe what do you? Yeah, I think there's going to be a big issue here.
Agreed. We'll see how this plays out. Speaking of computer chips, just 2 weeks ago, we covered a new chip foundry being announced in Utah, and I can't remember who was doing it, but it was a major investment. And just over the weekend, I saw, Kevin, that in the state of New York, they just announced a major, one of the biggest investments here in recent news. I think Micron, I believe it was Micron that was making that investment.
State put a lot of money into that to build that fab. I mean, we're shifting from offshoring to onshoring, and there's some nearshoring going on in there too. But this is all part of the dramatic shifts on the supply chain.
Yep, agreed. Many view it as a national security issue in terms of how little chip production was made here still in the States when, back in 1991 or so, I think the majority of the world's chips were still made in the U.S., if I'm not mistaken. But regardless, a number of big investments have been announced. And by the end of this decade, we should see a whole different ball game in terms of domestic sourcing of chips and overall supply. Now, Kevin, one last thought here about chips, because it's interesting as chips have proliferated everything we touch. I mean, how long before there'll be a chip in our water glasses that will be constantly monitoring if the glass is half full or half empty? I mean, we're going to have more chips with whatever we want to do with them in a couple of years, huh?
I thought you were going to tell everybody about the chip you have implanted in your neck there.
Not today. I was going to save that for later. But anyway, well, hey, so we're just touching on, that would have been story number 3 about the manufacturing industry, one of my favorite sectors of global business to talk about. So y'all check that out. We did also drop the link in the chat. All right. So Kevin, that brings us, we're shooting, me and you are extremely efficient here today. I tell you what, we're going to slow down a bit and take a breath, but let's talk about how we're creating smarter supply chains for stronger performance and resilience. So Kevin, tell us more about this news from our friends at IBM.
Well, we talked a little bit about vulnerabilities when it came to cybersecurity, right? But these over the past 2 years, supply chain vulnerabilities have been highlighted in virtual every sector and industry. And this demonstrates that even a small disruption in the supply chain, which is so intertwined and multifaceted, can really have dramatic effects. In fact, 93% of organizations have faced challenges associated with demand volatility. We always talk about every business, 100% businesses have a supply chain, right? If you don't have a supply chain, you're not in business. But you really need to know how to better anticipate and navigate these disruptions and the volatility. We were just talking about how the chips are now, being built. The sources for all of these components are changing from offshore to nearshore to onshore. And the organizations really need to be much smarter and build more agile supply chains. And according to IBM, the first step towards this is they call it continuous intelligent planning, or CIP. This approach integrates business planning with continuous and collaborative planning using artificial intelligence and its augmented capabilities. So CIP, these capabilities complement all of the other enterprise solutions, things like ERP, and it can sense and respond to the market changes that affect the supply chain. Right. So with this demand planning, CIP can help address the challenges around visibility and forecasting, workflows, and collaboration. In fact, I learned a lot because in the recent couple of weeks, because the next Digital Transformers, I'll be joined by Rob Cushman, the IBM worldwide leader of supply chain transformation, and Debbie Powell, the digital transformation leader at IBM Systems Supply Chain. So this is IBM's own supply chain, and the IBM consultant team is helping them transform. So they're going to discuss on the show how smart leaders are turning to what they call the new trifecta of hybrid cloud, data, and artificial intelligence in order to navigate this out of this supply chain chaos that we find ourselves in.
So just level set with three people out there that haven't heard of Digital Transformers yet. It is Kevin's highly successful podcast. It's part of the Supply Chain Now family programming. And I'll tell you, he's really hit it out of the park. So he just shared that on the next podcast episode we drop, which will be next week, Kevin, is that right?
I'm looking at my calendar, next to last Friday.
Okay, next to last Friday in the month of here in October.
Monday of this October.
Monday, okay.
24th October.
So circle October 24th in your calendars for that conversation with Kevin, Rob, and Debbie. And I tell you, Kevin, do you offer any pre-podcast listing homework so that we can, that sounds like quite a brain trust with the three of y'all.
You know what? Actually, last month was Stacy Short, where we talked about from the ERP side of the ledger, where we talked about how SAP and IBM have really been partnered for over 50 years. Man. So, ERP feeds the supply chain. So, check out September episode.
That's right.
Was that okay for a plug?
Oh, it was great. It was great. And so, folks, it's simple. It is very simple. Maybe our production team can drop the direct link in the chat. But, folks, you can look up Digital Transformers wherever you get your podcast from and check out all the past episodes, or be sure to subscribe so you don't miss these future episodes Kevin's speaking to. Let's do this, Kevin. I think our team, so the report that Kevin's referencing, y'all can check that out there from our friends at IBM. So do that. And then I want to share a couple of quick comments. So, a second ago, we were talking about putting chips everywhere, including our proverbial glass of water. John's like, hey, now that's a digital transformation. Completely agree. And it's coming. I tell you, as we all know, this is not a news story, Kevin, but still a couple years ago when I heard this story, it really stopped me in my tracks because LL Bean, if you remember, if you ever had a book bag, maybe from the LL Bean company, a couple of years ago, I saw a news article where in some of their clothing, they were putting sensors so that they could gather intel and analytics on how it was being used, what temperatures, how often it was being washed, all that stuff. Yeah. That is remarkable. And that's not even the cutting edge of where we are. That's probably 2 or 3 years old. So we're going to need a lot more sensors and chips where we're headed. Right, Kevin?
Sensors everywhere.
Yep. So going back on the automotive side, so Dr. Rhonda said, and she said she's trying to text, but her keypad is sticking. So I'm going to work through any typos here.
WD-40, right on your keypad.
Dr. Rhonda says.
Don't do that.
She says there was an issue with electric cars overheating and batteries being compromised. I know that's not a chip issue, but concerning nevertheless. Agreed. And we've all probably seen different footage of that, and hopefully that's something we can get recognized.
Hey, Scott,
yeah.
Have you ever driven a Tesla?
I have not. Have you?
Yes, and I couldn't even start the damn thing. No, seriously. It was so weird because I rented a Tesla and got in the car. I said, "Oh wow, I'm going to be looking good in my brand new electric vehicle." And then I sat down and it had a little square piece of plastic, and up on the screen, there's just one big screen, right in the middle of the vehicle. And there was a picture on it. It said, put the plastic between the two seats. So I took the plastic, I put it down between the two seats. Okay. Okay, take the car, put it down again, took the cart, moved it around, and I'm just looking, and the screen, this little movie kept, come on, idiot, put the card where it belongs. So I'm there for like 10 minutes, putting the card everywhere, under the seat, on top of the seat, on the dashboard. Nothing happens. So I finally break down, and I get out and I find this attendant, and I said, "Excuse me, I just can't start this car." And he sort of looked at me and laughed, and he said, "Let me show you." And he went in there, and I swear he put the car in the same spot that I put it, and the car just started right up.
Really?
I said, "Oh boy!" I mean, it was maybe a half an inch in the difference, And I said,
it was one of the few times
where the video said. And he said, "Yeah, I know, it's a little off."
That's just one of the few times, the handful of times in your career that you have not had the magic touch, Kevin L. Jackson. Just one of a handful of times.
Just cautionary tale when you drive a Tesla.
Well, it's fascinating as we've all watched the SpaceX launches. And, Kevin, of course, you worked at NASA, but I think there is a great parallel here, because if you remember the inside of the shuttle program, right, where the pilot and co-pilot sat, and everyone can kind of remember all the complexity and all the buttons and knobs, and I mean, it'd blow your mind. And then you look at SpaceX, and you look at what the pilot and co-pilot has. Of how it's been streamlined and simplified, and there's a lot of that's coming to global industry, whether it's automobiles or even running global supply chains, right? Kevin, your quick
Right.
thoughts there.
Well, you brought up SpaceX. They just had a launch
Right.
earlier this year back to the space station. But and you talk about how great they are with all the details and advancing technology. But did you know that the last launch they screwed up the NASA meatball?
Really?
For
What?
known for, I'm going to ask Catherine to put that in the chat, but the link in the chat. But they actually screwed up the NASA
Oh,
decal on the side on the side of the rocket.
man,
So everyone's having a little laugh about that one.
it's the simple things that can trip you up.
It's
That's
the
like messing
simple
up.
things that can come and bite you in the butt, right?
That's like messing with the Nike swoosh, right?
Yeah.
Or I don't know, the Apple logo. I don't know.
The Apple.
The Apple. A couple of quick comments here. Simon, hey, so great to have you back. It's been too long. So Simon says, we touched on sustainability earlier. Supply chain, Simon says, account for more than 80% of greenhouse gas emissions and more than 90% of the impact on air, land, water, biodiversity, and geological resources. Now, Simon, I appreciate you sharing that, because when I think about that, I'll sit down with Scott Case with the National Retail Federation, Kevin. This was back in February of this year. We're in Vegas with the RLA conference. And as we were talking about kind of what Simon's mentioning, he goes, Scott, supply chains do whatever we tell them to do, right? And there's so much truth. I mean, it's a simple thought, but there's so much truth there.
Yeah.
And Simon, as you know, pointed out so much opportunity there as well. Once we change those inputs so we can attack those numbers you mentioned there, Simon. Kevin, your quick thoughts there?
That's why we need more artificial intelligence. The regular normal intelligence is not cutting it anymore.
Real AI, really, real AI. Now, Jenny's going back to your fourth item here, Kevin. You were touching on this continuous intelligent or business planning.
Yes.
And Jenny says, big fan of continuous supply chain planning, not a set it and forget it in this constantly changing environment. So Ron Popeil, he sold plenty of set it, forget it toaster ovens, but that doesn't apply in so many different ways to global supply chain. Not yet, at least. All right. So Dr. Rhonda, really enjoyed your relatable story there with Tesla. I look forward to my first Tesla ride. And hey, the Cracker Jack production team has dropped that NASA decal or logo mistake in the chat. Y'all check that out. Okay. So Kevin, we have shot through all four stories that we're going to tackle here today. We talked about some space nerd stuff, because I think both of us are big space nerds. I know I am. It's fascinating to see what it continues to come out of James Webb project, and also
a lot of good stuff. They're putting or leveraging Hubble with the James Webb, and it's just given so much more additional insight.
That's right.
And speaking about Hubble, they're now looking at using a SpaceX capsule to boost Hubble, so that instead of deorbiting in the late in 2030, they may have to be able to keep it up for another 10 years.
Wow.
That's really would be worth it.
Absolutely agree. And to your point, it has been interesting. And y'all indulge us for a second here about some space nerd talk. It's really interesting as the web has come online and have dropped all sorts of thought-provoking and science changing knowledge. It's like the Hubble team has embraced the challenge and wants to remain as highly relevant as always. And it's like they've stepped up their efforts at Hubble.
Yeah, it's a great competition for the front.
It really is. That. I do too, and I look forward to learning a lot more about how we could get another 10 years with Hubble, because Hubble has changed our understanding on so many fundamental levels. And as web continues, as teams around the globe really have gotten their scheduled study slots with the Webb Space Telescope, it'll have the same impact, but probably by an order of, who knows, 10 or 100. We'll see.
So when you come up to DC and visit me, Scott, you fly into Dulles. There's a tunnel underneath Dulles. I don't know if you've been in that airport recently, but they have people movers down there, and on each side they have these huge pictures of Hubble pictures on both sides of the walkway for about half a mile. It's really? It's a fascinating walkway.
We're gonna make that happen, and we'll have one more thing when the Artemis. I don't have that new launch date from the Artemis, but that'll be fascinating to watch.
Yeah.
That'll be the world's largest rocket, if I'm not mistaken. That's bigger than the Saturn,
bigger
right?
Than Saturn V. Yeah, it's big. Yeah, bigger than Saturn V.
Wow. Alejandra says, my husband and I love all things space and would love to work in supply chain in any of the companies that work with space related projects. Well, Alejandra, you're in, there's some good news for you, because space supply chain will only continue to grow, especially as more commercial and private companies get involved in all the cool things taking place in space. And that will require, as we all know, lots of supply chain know-how. Kevin.
So Amanda, write that down. We're going to have a space supply chain special.
Yes, that's right. That is right. I love that idea.
Great.
Well, and some folks may not know you, Kevin, and we've talked about it in just about every conversation you and I have been on, but you actually spent time on what NASA project went to Pluto that you were part of?
Yeah, that was the New Horizon. That was a payload that I worked on. So it was great. I'd worked on some early payload processing systems. This one called EPIC for the Atlas launch vehicle, and we processed the New Horizon spacecraft. And it's kind of weird because you make sure all the T's are crossed and I's are dotted, check all the blocks right, and you button up the bird and it launches. They lit the candle, it goes, but you don't know if anything works for like 10 years.
Wow.
So we're sitting there 10 years later, and the spacecraft, it only has it's like less than 30 minutes in the flyby. And you just crossing your fingers, hoping that what you did 10 years ago actually worked. And the camera comes on and it starts taking pictures, and it was just wonderful.
That is awesome.
But yeah, I really enjoyed it. I worked on shuttle projects also along with Atlas. Yeah, that was another life, another time.
Well, we'll have to dive into that. I'll tell y'all on a more somber note, the Challenger, there's a Netflix, I think a 7-part documentary on the Challenger disaster on Netflix. And it is must-see, compelling. They interview the astronaut's family. They really walk through kind of what took place and how it impacted not just NASA, but the U.S. and really global, the global space community. So check that out. I think it's called The Final Flight on Netflix. Netflix. It is just remarkable. Okay, so Kevin.
Yes.
On a much lighter note, I want to talk about blockchain for a minute.
Okay.
I'm gonna pop this up here. So you and I joined our friends at TNS, NSSX, and Dealbox for a webinar.
Yeah.
This was back about a month ago.
In fact, I was just in Las Vegas at the Mobile World Congress with Jameson and John.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, really enjoyed how so we touched on a lot of different things in this webinar. And by the way, folks, you can sign up for the replay on demand, and our team will drop that link in the chat. But it really focused on a couple different business models that's really leveraging blockchain in a very practical and powerful way. So if you're a big fan of practical case studies, this is your jam here. But Kevin, What was one of your favorite components of this conversation here?
So, I mean, it was a great discussion with Jameson and John. Jameson he's the CEO of NSSX, and they are actually helping veterans with their medical claims. I know many of you have heard about the water problems at Camp Lejeune, how the Marines that were stationed there and their families really were poisoned by the water there. So there's like $40 billion have been set aside for our veterans. So he's helping the veterans go through all that paperwork. And John Alvarado of Dealbox, his company does what's known as investment packaging. You probably it's kind of a arcane art, but if you are an entrepreneur, you're starting a company, and you go out to try to get capital investors. Well, those investors want to know a bit about your company if you know what you're doing, right, before they give you money. So you have to package up all that information, and that process is investment packaging. Well, it's really unique though. They are both using the TNS new UCID service that's built on blockchain. It's called the Universal Communication Identifier. NSSX uses it to track the insurance claims, and Dealbox applies the technology to the due diligence process for raising capital, this investment packaging process. But in both cases, the UCID is used to record transactions associated with the documentation. All this is paper. And if you're just using paper, it could get lost. There could be mistakes. You may not have all the right pieces of paper. And if you've ever dealt with insurance companies, just one wrong sentence, one wrong missing piece of paper, it's all go back to, do not pass go. Go directly to jail.
That's so true.
But the UCID can be used to verify documents and keep track of changes, and use digital signatures to keep that in line.
Yep. So folks, that's right. Folks in our audience that may be entrepreneurs in the supply chain tech space, or really just any end-to-end global supply chain community, check out that Dealbox in particular, which may be able to help your due diligence components of your fundraising. And we've already dropped a link. Y'all can check out the on-demand webinar there from our friends at TNS that Kevin and I are talking about. So check that out. Okay. So one of the last things I want to share here today, Kevin, is let me see if I can pull this up here. So this is over the weekend we published. I think this is our 7th edition of With That Said. It's our LinkedIn newsletter.
Title, by the way.
Well, I do too, and I tell you, we don't leave too much unsaid around here, do we, Kevin?
I know. Even when you're supposed to.
That's right. But I'm sharing this graphic here, and we can drop the link in the chat. I'm surprising our production team with this, but we had a couple minutes. This goes out once a week, and we have almost 16,000 subscribers. Right at it, where it looks like we're 72 away from 16,000. But it's really
fast growth.
No kidding, in basically 7 weeks' time. So this past weekend, we focused on one of the things we touched on, Kevin, was Delta Airlines, because the day this published was basically the birthday of the first CEO of Delta Airlines. I'm going to share just 2 quick things here that I didn't know. Number one, when I've always thought that Delta, like the company name, really referred to the delta between their service levels and other
everyone else's.
But it's not. It actually their roots initially they were formed in Georgia, the predecessor to Delta. They moved the company to Louisiana and served the Mississippi Delta area. Hence
Oh,
the name.
that's the name.
Right.
Okay,
And then one other tidbit
that
I
makes
picked up
sense.
is had there not been the boll weevil epidemic back in the 20s that really decimated southeastern farms, and it grew a crop dusting aviation company to one. They ended up having about 18 aircraft and what at the time was the world's largest private fleet of aircraft. Well, it was all focused on eradicating the boll weevil. So had the boll weevil not had that epidemic not taken place, the company that would eventually grow into Delta Airlines, the second largest airlines company in the world, that might not have happened. So I guess in some weird way, I guess we got to give a high five to the boll weevil for creating one of the world's largest airlines, right?
That was probably one of the first great examples of transformation of a company really transforming themselves from killing boll weevils to flying us around the world.
Isn't that crazy? It's so funny how history works there. But all of that said, with that said, y'all check out our newsletter. You'll find it on the Supply Chain Now company page on our LinkedIn profile. It should be an easy way to kind of opt in and subscribe. We publish it right now every Saturday morning. We're still kind of tweaking the cadence and the time frames. But if there's any content ideas you have that you'd like to see in that kind of more casual viewing, hey, let us know. We'd love to take your suggestions.
Yeah, Greg really lets it hang out there. I mean, I would say it lets his hair out there, but
Kevin, we got to give a shout. I'm bad about this. We should give a shout out to Greg White, who is traveling. I believe his Kansas City Chiefs are taking on. They're playing tonight on Monday Night Football. So, Kevin,
Commanders lost against Titans.
Really?
I'll tell you.
Well,
we're in a rebuilding phase, obviously.
That's never fun. That is never fun. Well, Jenny says, I learned something new today about Delta Airlines. Hey, me and you both, I'll tell you, it's fascinating when you go back to kind of peeling the layers of the onion back about some of the largest companies and brands around that you think you know about. And then you uncover some interesting elements to their story. Okay, so Kevin, as we wrap here on the Supply Chain Buzz, we've dropped all the links to the stories that you and I have chatted through here today. Looks like our team dropped the link to With That Said, the LinkedIn newsletter we started about 2 months ago. So y'all check that out. Kevin, we've got the upcoming episode with Digital Transformers and IBM team coming up on October 24th. That will be interesting. Where can folks go and how can they connect with you and all the cool things you're up to, Kevin?
Well, actually, you can connect to me right here on the bus, the third Monday of every month. Although, like I said, this month I'm on the 10th, the 17th, and then we drop the next episode with IBM on Digital Transformers on the 24th. But as always, I'm on supplychainnow.com. You can catch me on Twitter and on Facebook and LinkedIn and Instagram. So I'm everywhere.
It's a shorter list of where folks can't find one Kevin L. Jackson. Well, hey, I really appreciate you filling in today for Greg White. Always a pleasure collaborating.
I can't fill his shoes, but I'll try.
Well, I just said collaborating. It's not collaborating. It's co-creating, right, Kevin?
Co-creating, yes.
All right, I gotta learn that and swap out those words for good. But Kevin, thank you very much here today.
No, thank you, sir. Thank you. I really enjoyed being with you.
Well, so don't go anywhere just yet. I want to thank our production team. I tell you, they're on. They're ready to go today. I bet they were kind of reading our minds where we were going. So thank y'all for dropping those resources. Chantel, Amanda, Catherine, you name it. Big thanks to all the folks in the cheap seats, sharing comments here today. I know we couldn't get to all of them, but really appreciate that. Hey, y'all check out the newsletter. Make sure you check out Digital Transformers wherever you get your podcasts, as well as Supply Chain Now. where we publish at Supply Chain Now Monday through Friday. You'll find something new in your podcast inbox. But whatever you do, hey, on behalf of Kevin and our entire Supply Chain Now team, Scott Luton, challenging you here on National Indigenous Day. Hey, let's lift up and celebrate folks from all walks of life that have contributed to where we are here today. But Scott Luton challenging you to do good, to give forward, and to be the change that's needed. And on that note, see you next time right back here at Supply Chain Now. Thanks, everybody.
See ya.